Welcome back to our channel for the most explosive daytime drama updates. Today is a phenomenal day to dive into the absolute madness heading straight for Port Charles. We have breaking spoilers that will leave you completely breathless, so strap in and prepare for the ultimate collision course. The countdown to the ultimate Port Charles explosion has officially begun, and the shockwaves are already tearing through the city. Jason is coming home. The legendary enforcer is finally breaking out of his WSB nightmare, but the highly anticipated homecoming is about to collide with a catastrophic web of lies. Britt Westbourne is standing directly in the blast radius, and she is about to face the most terrifying reckoning of her entire life. The stakes have never been higher, the secrets have never been darker, and the impending reunion between these two star-crossed lovers is guaranteed to detonate with unprecedented force. Britt is spiraling, the truth is clawing its way to the surface, and the fallout will leave absolutely no survivors. Right now, Britt is suffocating under the weight of the most sickening betrayal imaginable. The Huntington's disease, the terrifying genetic death sentence that dictated her every waking moment, forced her to push people away, and utterly shattered her world, was a complete and utter lie. The medication she so desperately injected into her veins, believing it was the only thing keeping her catastrophic symptoms at bay, was nothing more than saline. The visceral, gut-wrenching shock of realizing she was a pawn in a twisted, sadistic game orchestrated by the WSB is tearing her apart. Every tear she shed, every agonizing goodbye she prepared for, was manufactured by ruthless operatives to control her and force her into the cold fusion project. The sheer magnitude of this medical gaslighting is pushing Britt to the absolute brink of insanity. She isn't dying. She has her whole life ahead of her, but the psychological cost of this revelation is astronomical. The torture of believing your brain is deteriorating, only to find out you were injected with salt water by a rogue intelligence agency, is enough to break anyone. Britt is vibrating with a lethal combination of overwhelming relief and absolute, unadulterated fury. She is a brilliant doctor, a woman of science, and she was manipulated on a cellular level by the very people she thought she was outsmarting. The dramatic irony is suffocating, and the devastating reality of what this lie cost her is just beginning to set in. As if the saline bombshell wasn't enough to destroy her reality, the universe delivers another crushing blow to Britt's fragile psyche. Cassius Faison, the man who stole the face and life of her beloved brother Nathan West, is dead. Or at least, that is the official narrative being spun in the bloody aftermath of the recent chaos. Britt is forced to process the gruesome demise of a man who was both a monstrous fraud and a twisted link to her family's dark, inescapable legacy. The grief she is experiencing is complicated, toxic, and utterly paralyzing. She is mourning a dangerous ghost, a phantom who wore her brother's skin, and the psychological whiplash is leaving her gasping for air in a city that offers no mercy. Britt is drowning in a toxic ocean of her own making, consumed by the explosive secrets she chose to keep. She knew Cassius was an imposter. She harbored the explosive truth that he had usurped Nathan's life, and she kept her mouth firmly shut. The guilt of that silence is eating her alive, gnawing at her conscience like a rabid animal trapped in a cage. She played a highly dangerous game of deception, tangling herself in a web spun by Caesar Faison's dark offspring, and now the bill is coming due with a vengeance. The blood, the lies, the relentless manipulation, it is all converging on Britt, threatening to drag her down into an inescapable abyss just as the man she loves prepares to walk back into her life. Just when Britt thinks she cannot possibly endure another seismic shock, the July 10th episode drops a nuclear warhead right into her lap. The intel comes through loud and clear, sending a jolt of pure, unadulterated electricity straight down her spine. Jason's release is imminent. The WSB black site in Jakarta could not hold the lethal enforcer forever. The man who sacrificed his freedom and his future for the people he loves is finally coming home. The monumental 16,000th episode on July 13th will mark the triumphant, explosive return of Jason, and Britt is caught squarely in the crosshairs of his impending, unstoppable arrival. Britt's reaction to this monumental news is a chaotic, volatile cocktail of overwhelming relief and paralyzing terror. Her heart stops, her breath catches, and the world around her completely dissolves into a blur of anticipation. Jason is alive. He is free. She is profoundly, overwhelmingly relieved for Danny and everyone else in Port Charles who loves and relies on Jason. The thought of Danny finally getting his father back brings a fierce, protective warmth to Britt's shattered heart, but that warmth is instantly overshadowed by her own desperate, selfish desires. The man she loves is returning, and she has absolutely no idea what to expect when those icy blue eyes finally lock onto hers again. The memory of their desperate, passionate love declarations echoes in her mind, a haunting reminder of the future that was violently ripped away from them. Britt declared her love for Jason before he was hauled off by the ruthless agents of the WSB, and he looked her dead in the eye and delivered his own powerful declaration in return. They laid their souls bare in the shadow of impending doom, forging a bond that felt entirely unbreakable. Part of Britt cannot help but wonder if they can still have a future together, if they can somehow salvage their epic romance once she gets her own WSB legal mess sorted out and the dust finally settles. However, the euphoria of Jason's survival is instantly eclipsed by a suffocating, unbearable wave of guilt. Britt knows exactly why Jason was locked away in that hellish Jakarta black site. Yes, he took the fall to protect Rocco Falconeri from the fallout of the Roscollum shooting, but he was only in that vulnerable, desperate position because he was trying to save her. He risked absolutely everything, his life, his freedom, his connection to his son, all because he believed Britt was dying of a fatal genetic marker. He threw himself into the line of fire for a woman whose catastrophic illness was nothing more than a saline-induced illusion. The agonizing question now consuming Britt's every waking thought is whether Jason will ever be able to look at her the same way again. She dragged him into a lethal, high-stakes nightmare, tangling him in a web of WSB corruption and cold fusion madness that cost him months of his life. Will Jason wash his hands of her the second his boots hit the Port Charles pavement? Will the trauma of his imprisonment, the brutal conditions of the black site, have hardened his heart and extinguished the burning flame of their romance? Britt is terrified that she has irreparably destroyed the greatest love of her life, and the impending reunion is a ticking time bomb waiting to obliterate her final shred of hope. Britt knows she cannot hide from the reckoning. She cannot simply fall into Jason's arms and pretend the past few months of absolute hell never happened. She must face the music, and she is furiously preparing to deliver a devastating, emotionally grueling two-part confession. This is not just a simple apology, this is a desperate plea for redemption, a raw, unfiltered unburdening of her soul. Britt is preparing to lay all her cards on the table, knowing full well that this high-stakes gamble could either save her relationship or obliterate it for all eternity. She is ready to walk into the fire, but she has no idea if she will survive the flames. The first phase of Britt's confession centers entirely on the horrific medical fake-out. She must look Jason, a man who has endured unspeakable physical and psychological torture in a foreign prison, in the eye and tell him that her fatal diagnosis was a complete sham. She must explain that the agonizing goodbyes, the desperate scramble for a cure, the very reason he threw his life away to protect her, was all a calculated WSB illusion. The saline syringes, the gaslighting, the manipulation, she has to confess that his monumental sacrifice was built on a foundation of absolute, sickening lies. It is a truth that could easily shatter a lesser man. Yet, there is a powerful glimmer of hope in this dark revelation. Jason is a man of profound logic, loyalty, and unmatched perception. He knows the ruthless, sadistic lengths to which Roscollum and the WSB will go to achieve their twisted objectives. Jason was deceived right alongside Britt. He saw the fake test results, he witnessed her manufactured deteriorating condition, he believed the lie just as deeply as she did. Britt can only pray that Jason will recognize her as a fellow victim in this twisted game, that he will direct his lethal fury at the agency that orchestrated the deception rather than the woman who suffered through the agonizing psychological torture of a fake death sentence. But the second part of Britt's confession is where the true, catastrophic danger lies. This is the explosive secret that threatens to detonate their entire relationship and burn it to the ground. Britt must confess that she knew the truth about Cassius Faison. She must admit that she looked at a man wearing Nathan West's face, knew he was a dangerous imposter, knew he was a lethal operative tied to the darkest elements of the criminal underworld, and she stayed completely silent. She harbored a fugitive in plain sight, protecting a man who posed a direct, catastrophic threat to the people Jason loves and protects with his life. This is where Jason's infamous, unyielding moral code comes into play, and it could spell the absolute end for Britt Westbourne. Jason can forgive being tricked by a rogue intelligence agency, but he does not easily forgive a betrayal of trust from someone within his inner circle. Britt's silence regarding Cassius allowed a highly trained, deadly operative to roam the streets of Port Charles, endangering lives and manipulating the authorities. Jason's protective instincts are legendary, and discovering that the woman he loves knowingly concealed a threat of that magnitude could be the ultimate, unforgivable deal-breaker. The sheer hypocrisy of Britt demanding honesty while harboring the ultimate lie will not be lost on the sharp-minded enforcer. The stage is set for a confrontation of epic, earth-shattering proportions. When Jason finally returns to Port Charles on July 13th, he will not be the exact same man who left. The harsh, brutal realities of the Jakarta black site have fundamentally altered his perspective. He is coming back harder, colder, and more determined than ever to eliminate the threats surrounding his family and reclaim his life. Britt is walking directly into the path of a Category 5 hurricane, armed with nothing but the fragile hope that their profound emotional connection can withstand the devastating impact of her twin confessions. Picture the explosive moment their eyes finally meet across a crowded room in Port Charles. The air will crackle with unresolved tension, unexpressed grief, and a desperate, burning passion that refused to die in the darkness of a WSB cell. Britt will have to summon every single ounce of her courage to step forward, to look into Jason's icy blue eyes, and strip away the heavy layers of deception. She will have to bare her soul, presenting her massive mistakes, her paralyzing fears, and her overwhelming guilt on a silver platter, waiting for the legendary enforcer to pass his final, irrevocable judgment. Will Jason's guarded heart soften at the sight of the woman he loves, broken and desperately pleading for his forgiveness? Will he pull her into a fierce, passionate embrace, vowing to take down the WSB together and build a new future from the ashes of their shared trauma? Or will the sheer magnitude of her deception regarding Cassius Faison be too much for his rigid moral compass to bear? Will Jason turn his back on Britt Westbourne, leaving her to drown alone in the devastating consequences of her own disastrous choices? The clock is ticking, the tension is suffocating, and the July 13th showdown will change the entire landscape of Port Charles forever.